now we'll talk about the pons. Pons is the middle part of the brainstem, right? It is called pons because it's right from the Latin word bridge. So you can see it's a bridge-like. So it is basically forming a bridge between the forebrain and the cerebellum and the medulla oblongata. So it works as a bridge between the different parts of the brain. That's why it is called as the pons. Okay. Now this pons, it is located again in the posterior cranial fossa along with the medulla oblongata, right? Again, its anterior surface is lying against the anterior surface lying against the basioccipital and posteriorly it is related to the cerebellum, and superiorly you can see it is related to the connected to the midbrain, and inferiorly with the medulla oblongata. So when we talk about its relation, so anteriorly it is related to the clavus or the basioccipital bone, posteriorly with the cerebellum, superiorly with the midbrain, and inferiorly with the medulla oblongata. Now it is again a bulbous sort of a structure, bulbous shaped structure, where its width is more than its length. Its length is about 2 centimeters or 25 millimeters, and width is about 3.8 millimeters, right? Okay. Now this pons, when we talk about the gross features of the pons, so it has got again an anterior surface and the posterior surface. When we talk about the anterior surface, so you can see that anteriorly it is convex from side to side. Okay? It is convex from side to side, and it has, in the surface you can see the transversely running fibers. And these transversely running fibers, they are going to converge laterally and is going to form this peduncle, and this is called the middle cerebellar peduncle, by which it is going to be tied with the cerebellum. So here you can see these transversely running fibers coming over here, converging to form the middle cerebellar peduncle, and then is going to be tied with the cerebellum through this middle cerebellar peduncle. Okay. Other than this, in the midline, you can see this groove. This is called as a basilar groove, right? And this basilar groove, it lodges the basilar artery. Now, how the basilar artery is formed? We have talked about earlier that the two vertebral arteries, when they will come at the pontomedullary junction over here, then they will join with each other and going to form the basilar artery. And that basilar artery is going to run in the basilar groove. Okay. Now, if you trace it anterolaterally, you can see a nerve emerging out of it. On the anterolateral aspect of on the both sides, a nerve is emerging, and this is the trigeminal, the fifth cranial nerve. It has got the two roots: the small medial root, that is the motor root, and the large sensory root, lateral root, that is a sensory root. Okay. Other than this trigeminal nerve, the three more nerves are emerging, but these are emerging from the anterior aspect at the junction of the pons with the medulla, and these are the abducent, facial, and the vestibulocochlear nerve. So the arrangement is from medial to lateral. The most medial near the groove, that one is the abducent, and the later one, that is a facial, and the lateral most, that is the vestibulocochlear nerve. So this is about the anterior surface. Now we come to the posterior surface. Now posterior surface, as you can see that it is hidden by the cerebellum, right? So we remove the cerebellum and we come across with the posterior surface of the pons. And as I have discussed while talking about the medulla oblongata, that the cavity of the fourth ventricle, its upper half, it is contributed by the posterior surface of the pons. Okay. Now, if you see at the upper half, so you can see that its posterior surface, the cavity of the fourth ventricle, it is bounded laterally by you see this bundle of the fibers, and these are called the superior cerebellar peduncle. So laterally it is limited by the superior cerebellar peduncle. So the posterior part of the pons, posterior half of the pons, you can see that it is appearing triangular in shape. You see this one is a part of the medulla, right? This is a part of the medulla, and this is a part of the pons. So you can see the upper half, that is basically triangular in shape, right? So which is bounded inferiorly by the imaginary line and laterally by the superior cerebellar peduncle, right? Okay. If you look in the floor of the fourth ventricle, so you can see there is a fissure. There is the median fissure over here, or the median sulcus over here. Sorry, the median sulcus over here, right? Okay. This median sulcus, it is going to divide this triangular space into the two symmetrical halves, right? Okay. If you see it closely, because it's not much more prominent in this region over here in this model. So just on the lateral to this sulcus over here, this one, there is a small elevation, elongated elevation, and this is called as the median eminence. This small elevation, which is from the apex to to this lateral edges over here downwards, here it is. This is called the median eminence, and the lower part of median eminence, you can see this small rounded elevation, and this is called as the facial colliculus. So if I am going to repeat it again, then you can see that on the posterior surface of the pons, it is marked by the presence of the fourth ventricle, upper half of the fourth ventricle, and in which there is a posterior or the median sulcus in this region, and on just medial on each side of this sulcus we have got these two elevations, longitudinal elevations, and these are called the medial eminence, and the lower part of median eminence we have got a rounded elevation, and that is called as the facial colliculus. This facial colliculus is basically produced by the underlying abducent nucleus, and the facial nerve winds around it. So remember that the facial colliculus is not formed by the facial nucleus, it is formed by the abducent nucleus, which is surrounded by the winding around by the facial nerve around it, right? Okay, just later to the median eminence, there is a line of partition. There is a line of demarcation. This is called sulcus, and this is called the sulcus limitans. And behind the sulcus limitans, there is the area between the between superior cerebellar peduncle and sulcus limitans. This area, this is called as a vestibular area, or the area vestibuli, or the area, or the, and because of course the name is representing that there are vestibular nuclei lying behind it. Okay. Now the substantial now sulcus limitans को अगर follow करें towards the apex, so near the upper part of the floor of the fourth ventricle, the area of the sulcus limitans, there is a bluish gray color discoloration, right? Grayish bluish discoloration, and that discoloration, it is called as the substantia ferruginea, which is due to the presence of the pigmented nerve cells in this region. So this is all about the posterior surface of the pons. Thank you. It is also called as the mesencephalon, right? So mesos means the middle, and the encephalos means the brain. So it's a part of the brain which connects the forebrain with the hindbrain, right? You can define the midbrain as the part of the brain that connects the forebrain with the hindbrain. Okay. Now this, इसकी जो shape है, it is just like a tube-like. It's just like a tube. You can see over here, just like a tube, right? And because why it is tube? Because it is responsible for the conduction of the fibers, conducting the fibers from the forebrain down to the hindbrain. It works as a conduit. It's just tube-like. It's just 2 centimeters, about 0.8 inches or 2 centimeters long. It just as a conduit for the passage of fibers from the forebrain to the hindbrain. Okay. उसकी location क्या होगी जी? Again, it is located where? It is located in the posterior cranial fossa, and it is the present in the it passes through the the tentorial notch से pass करता है. Tentorial notch is the tentorial cerebelli, which is just going to roof the posterior cranial fossa, right? It is just like this. So it is this like this, the tentorial membrane, और यहाँ से this is a notch from which it is passing, right? So again, it lies in the posterior cranial fossa by passing through the tentorial notch. Okay. Now location भी इसकी होगी जी. Okay, now we'll talk about its characteristic features, the gross features. So when we talk about gross features, so सबसे पहले you can see on the anterior aspect. On the anterior aspect, you can see these two pillars, right? These two pillars over here, and these are called as the crus cerebri. So it is characterized on the anterior surface by the presence of these two side pillars and a depression in the middle, right? These two side pillars, these are called as the crus cerebri. Crus cerebri again is a Latin word. Crus means the pillars, and the cerebri means brain. So these are basically the pillars of the brain, and these are called the pillars of the brain because the major fibers from your cerebral cortex will pass from the cerebral cortex down to the hindbrain, right? So crus cerebri में जो fibers run करते हैं, of course में cortico spinal fibers run करते हैं, cortico nuclear fibers run करते हैं, right? In the middle part से, और उसके anterior part से the frontopontine fibers, and then posterior part से इसके जो है temporopontine fibers. So these are 3 types of fibers which are passing through this crus cerebri. This crus cerebri is basically the part of the peduncles. Peduncle of the midbrain is basically the anterior part of the midbrain. ठीक है, you see the cross section, so then we're becoming a cross के जो peduncles है, these are basically consisting of the interior part, notched part, right, which consists of this, you know, the tegmentum of the midbrain and also the crus cerebri, जिसमें आपका substantia nigra भी पड़ा होता है, right, and the reticular formation वगैरह सब कुछ होते हैं, right. So the tegmentum and the crus cerebri, they are going to contribute to the peduncles. So that's why this fossa between these two crus cerebri, this fossa, this depression, this is called as a interpeduncular fossa. Right, this interpeduncular fossa को अगर आप देखें तो you see that in the floor of the interpeduncular fossa you can see that this gray matter sheet in this region, which is perfect. You can see the small spots in this region. These are the small perforations in that sheet of the gray matter in the floor of the interpeduncular fossa, and that's why this is called as a posterior perforated substance. So the characteristic feature when we talk about the anterior surface of the midbrain, we have got the crus cerebri, we have got the interpeduncular fossa, and then this posterior perforated substance. ठीक है जी? Okay. Now, on the anterior surface, we are left with one structure that on the medial border of this crus cerebri, a small nerve emerges. You can see this one. It's hidden by actually this one. You can see this one. This small nerve on the both sides. And this is the oculomotor nerve which emerges from the anterior aspect of the midbrain, just along the medial margins of the crus cerebri, right? And as soon as this will arise, it will enter in the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus. This cavernous sinus is present on lying on the both sides of the, you know, the body of the the pituitary fossa के जो दोनों साइड पे है ना, on the both sides of the body of the sphenoid. तो यहाँ पे साइड पे आपका cavernous sinus रन कर रहा होता है. तो as soon as they will arise, they will run in the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus. Okay. Now we come to the posterior surface. When we talk about the posterior surface, it is characterized by the presence of these four rounded elevations. These four rounded elevations, these are collectively called as the corpora quadrigemina. And these are called as the colliculus, or collectively the colliculi. So these colliculi, these are, you know, separated by this transverse groove and the vertical groove into the two pairs, the superior colliculi and the inferior colliculi. ठीक है जी? Colliculus again is a Latin word which means a mount or the rounded elevation. So these four are collectively called as the corpora quadrigemina. So superior colliculi, these are basically the relay centers for your visual reflexes, right? And the inferior colliculi, these are the relay center for your auditory reflexes. ठीक है जी? जो आपके auditory pathways हैं, they pass through here. For example, कि आपके जो cochlear nucleus fibers जो आ रहे हैं, they are going to reach their access to the inferior colliculi, and then from here they are going to the medial geniculate body and then to the visual cortex, auditory cortex, right? So these are related with these are also, you can say, these are the auditory relay centers, and these are the superior colliculi, these are the visual relay centers. ठीक है जी? Okay. Now on the lateral surface, when we talk about see the midbrain, we have got the anterior surface, the posterior surface, and the lateral surface on the both sides, right? On the lateral surface, you can see the two bundle of the fibers running anterolaterally, right? Coming from the superior colliculus and going towards anteriorly towards the thalamus, and similarly from the inferior colliculus, these are going towards the thalamus again, right? So the upper one is called a superior brachium, and the other one, the lower one, is called as the inferior brachium. Superior brachium again is going to connect these are bundles of nerve fibers that are going to connect the superior colliculus with the lateral geniculate body, and from the lateral geniculate body and the optic tract. ठीक है? The fibers जो यहाँ से आएंगे वो आपके lateral geniculate body तक जाएंगे, और they are going to connect the optic tract. And of course, the optic tract is getting the fibers from the optic nerve, right? From the retina, the reverse fibers coming from here through this tract, they will pass the lateral geniculate nucleus, and they are going to end into the superior colliculus and the pretectal nucleus. Okay. Whereas the inferior brachium, it is basically connecting the inferior colliculus with the medial geniculate body, and from here it is going to the auditory cortex, right? So, and there is one thing we left. Oh yes, on the posterior surface, you see below the inferior colliculus from the midline, a small nerve emerges, and this small nerve which is emerging from here, this is the cochlear nerve. This is a small short stem like the thin nerve which is basically emerging, right, just inferior to the below the inferior colliculus, and it will wind around the midbrain, right, and go anterolaterally and come to lie anteriorly, and along with the third cranial nerve, both nerves, they will enter into the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus. So this is all for the midbrain.